what's up? This is Crexon. I want to welcome you to episode 5 of Soundwave, where today we're going to be reviewing Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Now, this album was released on December 1st, 1973. It was produced by Tony Iommi and supposedly Patrick Meehan, but like I said in the last video, we'll get to that in the video after this one, actually. That's where it gets interesting. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is, one of the more celebrated works of Black Sabbath. One thing I always liked about Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, though, is actually its artwork. The cover art kind of depicts a man being, tortured and tormented by demons and stuff like that. It says 666, there's a skull, hands reaching out and stuff. But if you look at the artwork on the backside of it, it's this man kind of lying peacefully around his loved ones, like these lions at the feet of his bed. And, he's kind of departing this world peacefully. So it's very much kind of like, that typical Judeo-Christian imagery of heaven and hell and a life of sin versus a life of piety. The road of evil and the road of good. Apparently a lot of the writing for this album was done in some haunted castle that, bands like Led Zeppelin and, Mott the Hoople had written stuff at, and they were just kind of looking for inspiration. This album came out at a time when progressive rock was really starting to pick up steam, and you'll notice an influence on that on this album. But before I get carried away and start rambling, let's just name the tracks, standard track listing. So it's going to be Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, a National Acrobat, Fluff, Sabbra Cadabra, Killing Yourself to Live, Who Are You, Looking for Today, and Spiral Architect. Let's get to it. Track 1, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Now, there's a pretty famous story with this song. When they were recording and getting ready to make this album, Tony Iommi had gotten a pretty severe case of writer's block, and with him being the main creative force of the band, when he couldn't think of anything and he didn't do nothing, the other guys did nothing. They would basically just sit there until he basically came up with something, and nothing was happening until he came up with that riff. And once that riff was created, the rest of the album kind of came after that. Really what set the tone for the rest of this. And it's, one of his most iconic riffs, just that da 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 da. I mean, you heard it in the intro. It's just, I remember the first time hearing that, I was like, whoa, this is fucking awesome. One thing I like about this song is its use of dynamics, and it's done a little bit differently than what you would hear in most songs, because usually songs that like to experiment with dynamics, it's usually a quiet verse, loud chorus, kind of like the song Black Sabbath from the first album. This, it's the opposite. The verse is just really aggressive, loud, bombastic kind of thing. And then when you get to the chorus, the nobody will ever let you know, that whole section, there's acoustic guitars and kind of clean guitar fills over that and stuff. So yeah, just a more interesting use of the dynamics. It kind of just flipped the script. Really cool bass fills by Geezer Butler during the verse riff. Really like that stuff. Then we get into the super heavy bridge section, and at this point is when you really notice just Ozzy just pushing his vocals to the absolute limit. Probably the highest he's ever sang, and you hear that a lot on this album in particular. And when he hits that one note, it's like, where did you run to? That whole section, he almost kind of overshoots it at first, and he kind of goes out of key, and I kind of like that quality about it. I mean, you hear a lot of modern music with the pitch correction and the auto-tune, and it just, everything sounds too perfect and robotic, and, just the old days of just rock and roll where the imperfections are part of what made it, and I really like that. The fact that, he is a little bit out of key, and it's not perfect, but, it's like a real band playing, like actual human beings. I really enjoy that. And eventually it goes into this outro section that fades out, just riff playing. This song is just filled with a lot of cool riffs, and lyrically it seems to be about the negative aspects of the Black Sabbath experience, the relentless touring and dealing with, all these businessy type of people, and, all the crap they have to go through basically to do the thing that they love, and that's perform and play music. This is a classic track, one of their best ever. I mean, I love this song. Just the riff alone, you could play that on repeat all day and I wouldn't get sick of it. So yeah, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath rules. Track 2, A National Acrobat. Now, this is the song I really want to mention, the biggest gripe I have with the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath album in general. and that it's its production. It's very muted and almost tame sounding, and those are words you never want to describe a metal album of all things. Like, every time I listen to this album, I feel like I have to turn it up, and there's a lot of songs on here where, like, some of them sound louder than others, and, you know, some people might like that, you know, different dynamics, like, peaks and valleys, but, you know, some of the rockier songs should not sound, like, quieter than other songs that are more low-key, kind of laid back and relaxing. It's just very strange. That being said, though, A National Acrobat is a cool song. It starts off with this cool, groovy riff, you know, just da-da-da-da, 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 and then it comes in with this, like, harmony later on. I really like the way Ozzy sings on this. He sounds very nasally, though, especially when he sings, like, some of the, like, in the verses, like, some of the lyrics, you know, like, embryonic style, like, it's really just singing, like, up here. Yeah, near the middle, we get this cool guitar part where there's a lot of wah that Tony Iommi utilizes. Just this wow, 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 wow. Like, one of the coolest riffs on the album. I really like that. And, you know, just obviously, you gotta believe me. That whole section grooves really hard. There's, like, a guitar solo during it. The part right after it, though, I never like this section. It's just, it's easily the worst part of the song, probably the worst part of the album. I know that sounds harsh, but I don't know why they threw that section in there. Like, this song would have been so much better without that. I like the song overall, but that part just sucks in my opinion. I'm sorry. The part after it is cool. You know, the dun down, dun dun down, and you hear, like, the kind of percussion that Bill Ward does in the background. It kind of gives me almost like fusion kind of vibes, like almost something you hear in, like, a Santana song or some shit. It's kind of cool. I really like the outro section. It's you know, very guitar dominated. I mean, it's a metal band, it's obviously going to be guitar dominated, but, you know, not a lot of spots that Geezer and Bill Ward, I would say, comparatively do a lot, except for the outro here, where it's just really cool. Like I said, I would say 90% of the songs that part is so goofy sounding. It just really doesn't gel with me. And the lyrics seem to be about, like, the conception of, like a fetus or some kind of unborn child, and, like, how it, like, gains, like, universal consciousness or something, and how we should live our life to the fullest. Like, weird stuff. I mean, they were still coked out of their minds just like they were on Volume 4, but yeah, National Acrobat, mostly good except for that one section. Track 3, Fluff. Now, this song was dedicated to this DJ by the name of Alan Freeman. Now, Alan Freeman was someone that would play a lot of Black Sabbath songs on the radio. Apparently, he was one of the few DJs at that time that would do that on a pretty regular basis. So the band decided to honor him by naming the song Fluff. His full nickname was, like, Alan Fluff Freeman, so Fluff. It's just very relaxing instrumental, very similar to Laguna Sunrise, like on the previous record. It's just it's got this nice, soothing acoustic guitar part. There's some piano near the middle. We get almost like this clean guitar with reverb. I don't know if it's like a regular guitar or, like, almost like a lap steel kind of thing, but yeah, very soothing. You know, nice little arrangement. Just kind of catch your breath before you get back into, like, the more rocky stuff. But yeah, that's all I really got to say about Fluff. Cool little song. Track 4, Sabbra Cadabra. Now, this song is, like, really, like, a highlight of the album in my opinion. And the first time I heard it wasn't actually the Black Sabbath version. It was the cover by Metallica that they did on the Garage Days Revisited, or whatever the hell it's called. That collection of covers and B-sides that they put out in the late 90s. And the first thing you notice about the song right away is that groovy riff at the beginning. Just it just immediately hooks you in. You know, it's just got this cool, just, you know, it just grooves and jams really hard, and Ozzy's singing sounds really good on it. You know, again, singing really high, pushing his voice to the limits and stuff. And I really like the bass fills during the chorus. You know, when you someone love me every single night. Like that whole section you hear in the background, who do like boom, 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 like little stuff like that. Towards the middle, though, it kind of goes away from this kind of dancey rock kind of feel into this almost prog rock kind of progression. And the keyboard parts were done by Rick Wakeman, who's pretty famous for being the keyboardist of progressive rock legends, Yes. And apparently he just refused payment. They ended up like paying him in beer. Like he didn't want to be credited or anything. He was just happy to play on the song. You know, towards the end, we get this cool kind of fusion-y kind of sounding jam outro with a piano and organ, and they just kind of jam the song up until the end. You know, there isn't really like a real ending. It just sounds like a band just kind of jamming it out until they just stop playing. But, you know, usually I would complain about that, but in this song, it just kind of works. It's just this constantly evolving and shape-shifting track that, you know, you never really know where it's going to go. And, you know, lyrically, it's just like a love song. Nothing really complicated. But, yeah, it's all about the music and the changes and just the cool stuff. Not a lot of solos by Tony Iommi on this one. Notably. I mean, there's a lot of different guitar parts going on throughout, but it's more just about, you know, the groove at the beginning in that jam, and then the middle where it gets to that synthy kind of prog rock part, and then the outro, which is like this kind of fusion kind of jam feel. But yeah, cool song. One of my favorites on the album. Just really underrated track in general in the Black Sabbath discography, I think. Definitely worth checking out. Track 5, Killing Yourself to Live. Now, the first riff you hear in the song is like very reminiscent of something you would hear on Volume 4. In my opinion, it's just you know, really cool. It's got like that growl to it, like a lot of Volume 4 does. Then we get to this verse riff, and it's very interesting. It's got this clean guitar that has almost like a lot of chorus or flanger on it, very watery sounding, like it almost sounds like it's wavering. And Ozzy kind of singing, you know, people look and people stare. Like, it sounds really cool. It's got a nice kind of walky groove to it. And then it gets to the chorus, and, you know, brings back that wolfy sounding guitar. It's just killing yourself to live. You know, great part. This song's also like another one, kind of like Sabbra Cadabra, where it changes a lot. Probably my favorite guitar solo on the album. Just really kind of, again, very Volume 4 kind of moody feel to it. You know, nothing super flashy, just serves the song really well. Middle section, again, this is kind of groove, kind of prog stuff. You get some more synthesizers and keyboards that come in. There's this other, a little bit later on too, there's this other guitar riff. It's just almost that kind of like old jazzy kind of jam stuff that they would do in the earlier albums. Come to think of it, there's a lot less of that in the these last two albums. You know, Ozzy kind of sings along, like that whole part. It sounds great. Kind of ends with, you know, just kind of ends like that with this cool little outro. Lyrically, it seems to be like, I've always interpreted it as like this like excessive lifestyle, because there's just one part you literally hear Ozzy say like, smoke it, get high, and it's, you know, doing all this crazy excess stuff, like you're killing yourself to live, like living hard, partying hard, and, you know, destroying yourself, but, you know, really experiencing like just the craziest shit that you can. I guess it's like you could say it's thematically similar to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. It's some of like the negative stuff they have to deal with. But yeah, really cool track. Track 6, Who Are You? Now, this continues the kind of synthesizer experimentation that you've been hearing a little bit in the previous two tracks, but this song is completely dominated by it. There's really no guitar at all. It's like synthesizer, bass, drums, and piano, and just Ozzy singing. And apparently the song was composed after Ozzy just got hammered one night and just started messing around with like a Moog synthesizer. It might not have been a Moog, it might have been something else. But he's the one that actually composed this track, and it's really cool. This menacing synth part, just bow, wow, bow, wow, and you hear like these other synthesizers, and it almost sounds like it's just melting like around your sense of hearing. It's really cool. Geezer's bass tone just kind of really fills out the track makes it even very warm sounding. I like Ozzy singing during it. During the second verse, there's like these cool like harmonized vocals that he does. Really dig that. The bridge section is very spacey sounding. Like you almost feel like you're just kind of floating through the cosmos. It's just like that kind of thing with like piano in the background. There's like this like marching kind of beat that Bill Ward does at one point. Lyrically, there's like a lot of references to the classic novel 1984, and it seems to be like almost from the protagonist of the song's perspective, like the elites, you know, the rich, whatever you want to call them, are kind of underestimating the power of the poor and like the working class and the oppressed, and don't realize the power that they actually hold in numbers. And, you know, they get their shit together, like they better watch out. But yeah, one of my favorite songs on the album, just really different from everything else, but cool experiment. I like it a lot. Track 7, Looking for Today. This song kind of has this kind of fun, kind of groovy, kind of just dance kind of feel. Just down, da, 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 that kind of vibe to it. You actually hear those hand claps during the second verse. Kind of cool. I don't know if you would call it like a shuffle beat. I'm not a drummer, but you know, just like that kind of drum beat that Bill Ward does is really cool. The chorus is really cool, actually. It's, again, this use of dynamics, kind of like in Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, but done the opposite way, where it's acoustic guitar. You hear these flute parts that Tony Iommi plays, and Ozzy's singing sounds really good. It goes back and forth between those two sections, and then there's this middle part where it has this really cool descending guitar part I really like. It's just dun 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 dun. I think that's those like the bass notes that he hits, and it's just these other strings that he arpeggiates. And you just hear Ozzy going like, looking for today. Again, really singing high, pushing his vocals to the limit. And it just kind of fades out with that, with this really great sounding guitar solo that Tony Iommi does. Lyrically, it seems to be about kind of like disposable musical acts, like almost like pop artists, where they're just kind of making this like really digestible for the masses, lowest common denominator kind of stuff, and they could be replaced at any given moment. So it almost kind of like a critique of the music industry. You know, all these years later, the more things change, the more they stay the same, I guess, because we still have a lot of those same complaints now. Yeah, it's a pretty cool song overall, but I do feel it's like one of the weaker ones. The first 6 on this album, I would say, are good to great, and this one's just pretty good. But yeah, I like it. Track 8, Spiral Architect. Now, for the life of me, I don't know why, but every time I go to think back about Spiral Architect, I can't remember what the fuck it sounds like until I actually play the track. It just never resonates with me as much as any of the other songs on the album. But it's got this, like, you know, nice kind of haunting acoustic guitar intro that I like. It's got this kind of happy, energetic band intro, just dun 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 bam bam da 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 da, and it kind of builds, and then this is cool, like Tony Iommi, like that he does. During the verse, you hear like a lot of strings and just kind of swelling in and out. You hear it during the chorus too. Really cool bass part during Geezer Butler during the verse part. I really like that. You know, just a lot of cool like fills that he just throws in there, really nice. And during that chorus I mentioned with the string accompaniment, he kind of just very swelly, just little simple, like high up on the neck kind of stuff to just kind of fill up the sound with that warm tone that he has. The song does feel like, you know, a pretty climactic ending. It just kind of builds up crescendos towards the end. They put this like fake applause at the end. I guess it's supposed to be like play or something, and then it just kind of fades out with this jam with acoustic guitar. It's an okay song, but like I said, I can never remember what it sounds like. When I hear it, it sounds fine. I enjoy it, but I don't know. It just doesn't really resonate with me like everything else does on the album. The lyrics seem to be about building from positive experiences to life and becoming a different, like a unique person, a unique individual, and the name of the song itself, Spiral Architect, like being a reference to like DNA, like a DNA spiral. So it's and every person's DNA is unique to theirs. So it's almost like taking your uniqueness and kind of taking your experiences and crafting your own just unique life story and becoming your own individual you are the spiral architect of your life. So lyrically, it's a cool concept, but musically, I don't know, it just doesn't stick with me as much. Like I said in the previous video, this month's featured artist is Psychoprism. Psychoprism is a New Jersey and New York-based power metal band, so any fans of old school power metal or even bands like Queensryche will probably really enjoy these guys. They just put out a record last December. Here's a clip of their cover of You've Got Another Thing Coming by Judas Priest.
You've got another thing coming. You've got another thing coming. That's right. Here's where the talking ends. Well, listen this night, there'll be some action spent. Drive, calling all the shots up.
So what are my overall thoughts about Sabbath Bloody Sabbath? Well, the biggest thing I always had against it is just that muffled, flat-sounding production that the album has. It makes it sound very tame and just not very aggressive. Even though it has heavy and aggressive moments, the production really kind of takes back a little bit from that. And I always feel like I have to turn this album up louder compared to a lot of other stuff because it's just very quiet and muted sounding almost, and I really hate that. One thing I will say is that it is experimental, kind of like how Volume 4 was, but it does seem to be, a little bit more focused, a little bit better arranged than a lot of the stuff on Volume 4, because there was some stuff on Volume 4 where it just sounds like they were kind of just throwing it together. Here, like, every part has a purpose, and it was, arranged really well. There's not as much of that in comparison, but the production kind of, it's almost like a one step forward, two steps back kind of thing, because the production kind of brings that down a little, which sucks. Ozzy Osbourne sounds great though on lead vocals. Like at this point, it's like the hardest he's ever pushed himself as a vocalist. He's not singing like that nowadays. I can tell you that much. The album also doesn't have as many heavy riffs. Like it does have some, like the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath one, the ones in Killing Yourself to Live. But, a lot of it is more groovy, more prog rocky, just experimental kind of stuff like that. Geezer's still kind of low in the mix. I mean, you notice him maybe like a little bit more than you do in Volume 4, but again, it's nothing like the first 3 records, which is a damn shame. Ward is also a lot more reserved, and one thing I start to notice when their compositions are more focused and song-oriented, his drumming seems to be more like stripped down, laid back. Like, he still has little things here and there that he does, but when they do more jammy kind of songs, like you hear on the first 3 records and some of the stuff on Volume 4, well, the first 2 records, I mean, and some of the stuff on Volume 4, he's doing all kinds of crazy fills, drum beats and stuff, but when it comes to like a more song-oriented stuff, he really pulls it back. And, I think back on like songs like Paranoid and most of Master of Reality, where he's just, keeping it pretty simple. It feels like a lot of that on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath as well. But I keep going back and forth because I think of the best songs of Volume 4 and I think of the best songs of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. And I don't know if the best that this album has to offer beats that. I mean, it's close, but they also go into very different vibes, so they're kind of hard to compare. And this album also doesn't have as many hype moments. Like, when I listen to the first 4 records, there's always a couple of the songs where it's like, let's go. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath doesn't have that as much. It's a very different beast. It's almost more like a contemplative record as opposed to one looking for any kind of visceral impact like the first 4 did. And I think a lot of that has to do with the strong progressive rock elements that it introduces. I mean, it has freaking Rick Wakeman from Yes. I mean, I don't know how much more proof you can need of this, the different tone that this album has compared to the first 4. Yeah, at this point in the Black Sabbath discography, I think the band's drug use is really starting to catch up with them in their nonstop touring schedule. Due to management constantly telling them, hey, record, tour. And between all those things, the band was really starting to get kind of burnt out. I think you started to feel that with Volume 4 and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. The pressure, especially, was on Tony Iommi, because apparently at one point after the Volume 4 tour, he literally collapsed off stage as soon as they were done. Just, the amount of cocaine and just the stress really starting to catch up to them. So in a lot of ways, some people point to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath as the beginning of the end of the classic lineup, and things started to unravel. despite it being such an acclaimed record in their discography. A lot of the lyrics on this album I find just to be odd or not as interesting as the ones on Volume 4. With all that in mind, a bit of a mixed bag, kind of like Volume 4. I do think it's pretty good overall. The first 6 tracks are probably my favorite. Spiral Architect and Looking for Today are always like the 2 lesser tracks, in my opinion. So overall, I'd probably give this album like a 3.5 out of 5. Again, pretty good record, but I really don't see just people worship this album. Like, it's considered like one of their best albums. And, for me, I just always thought it was pretty good. But, nowhere near Paranoid or Master of Reality, that's for damn sure. Top 3 tracks, pretty easy for me in order of appearance. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, Sabbra Cadabra, and Who Are You? I would also put like Killing Yourself to Live as an honorable mention, but, like I said, I try to stick to 3 tracks. Those are my thoughts on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Next week, we will be looking at Sabotage. Now, Sabotage is a very interesting record. Can't wait to talk about that one. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next week.